Good morning, everybody, and much love to those of you that took the time to show up to the channel this morning. We're going to look at two amazing verses from the New Testament that seem to give clues as to when Jesus might return. Now, many of you have asked for more of these kinds of studies that tie in all the other things that we look at into the Bible. Now, the other stuff has to be looked at as well. The mainstream media entertainment, we have to do that because the enemy is trying to use mainstream entertainment to brainwash people to not believe in the Bible. So we have to unbrainwash people because people aren't going to stop watching mainstream entertainment. Now, many of the people on this channel have stopped watching mainstream entertainment, but we are just a very small minority. That's why we do the decodes on the episodes and all of this, because most people are deceived. 95% of Christianity is even deceived because these are the types of folks that still take their children to theme parks and allow that brainwashing to happen and still observe the satanic holidays, right? So our job is not to judge these people, but our job is to unbrainwash them, to show them that the mainstream entertainment is trying to deceive them, right? And then when we do studies like the studies we're going to do today, this is when it all sinks in and makes sense, because then you can see the holy version, the truth, juxtaposed to the enemy's lies and him trying to deceive people. And then it becomes very real. It becomes very clear. Because if I just show you this side, then we just get marginalized into a corner because the enemy has done a really effective job at marginalizing God's people into that club, right? But when you show people the mainstream entertainment in which these biblical themes are almost in every single episode, that's when people wake up. Then they can see the bad and the good. So that's why we do this. So just a quick refresher on that. Now, thanks to the subscriber that sent me these verses and asked me to look at the timeline, the entire timeline of the Bible. And we're going to start out with these two verses. First, the generations that Jesus, in his own words, spoke about. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David into captivity in Babylon are 14 generations. And from the captivity in Babylon until the Christ, 14 generations. That's 42 total. Now we're going to take Jesus' words and we're going to drop it into a timeline that we're going to review in very high detail. And that will begin to illustrate to you what it is we're looking at and why I believe we are truly in the last days, and Jesus' words here and in another place we're going to look at also seem to be clues that we are in the final last days. Now, this next scripture has always just given me promise and hope that we are 2,000 years after this event and that we are in the last days. This is Mark 5:13. And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. This is tantamount to an unholy, unclean baptism. Drowned in the sea. Now, before this, these evil spirits actually said to Jesus, this is not yet the appointed time. I figure it out, but I don't want to get held up on here not finding this verse. Oh, here we go. So this is it. And suddenly they cried out, saying, what have we to do with you, Jesus, the Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? Now, what is this, the time? What does that mean? Jesus could have easily just killed them, right? But he didn't. He sent them into 2,000 pigs. Thanks to the subscriber that just gave me that, because I was completely lost. Happens sometimes. I'm not perfect. So let's break down this timeline and see if we can derive a general time frame for Christ's return. So we're going to start at the beginning here. Now I've got this whole timeline pulled up, but we're going to start just in the beginning. But here you can see it in its entirety. And at a certain point, we're going to review the colors of the rainbow and how that fits into the timeline as well, because it actually overlays the entirety of human history. We're going to break that down as well. But first, we're going to start with Adam. And here's Adam. I'm going to zoom this in. Adam at 4000 BC. Now, these are not exact dates, but they're accurate to within plus or minus 50 to 100 years. And that's all we need to be concerned with at this point, because we're looking at things in terms of thousands of years. So following this biblical timeline, we're going to fast forward through these first 20 patriarchs, which represent 2,000 years, all the way to Abraham. Here you can see it. It's 20 generations. There's Adam at the top, 4000 BC, and Abraham at the bottom at 2000 BC. Remember, BC counts backwards. So I wanted you to get your bearings within this timeline to understand what you're looking at here. This is the first 20 generations of human history to Abraham. Then Jesus tells us about the 14 and 14 and 14 generations that we just read at the beginning of the show, between Abraham and himself. Now, this is crazy because we're going to break this down. This is another 2,000-year period between Abraham and Jesus. Jesus breaks it down into 14 and 14 and 14 generations. And this first 14 generation segment represents a 70-year generation each, 70 years old. The second one, 28 years old was the average age of the generation. And finally, this last 14-year segment, they averaged 42 years old per generation. So these were Jesus' words, and I believe there are clues hidden within this. So 2,000 years after Jesus walked the earth would mark this exact moment in time, 2021 to 2040. Now, we don't know exactly when Jesus died or when he was born. We can get it down to plus or minus 2 to 5 years, but there's a lot of debate surrounding that. And I believe that it's been intentionally obscured in the historical record. I think this was done to obscure the general timeline for his second coming. You see, I believe Jesus gave us this clue of the pigs right here in about 30 AD is when that miracle of the 2,000 pigs happened. And I believe this was a clue. Because as we just told you, Jesus sent the demons into the pigs. They reasoned with Jesus and said that it was not yet the appointed time for their eternal death. So Jesus cast them into the pigs, 2,000 of them, or about 2,000, the verse says. To me, that was Jesus saying, you have 2,000 more years to possess animals and people before your eternal destruction. Now, when we back this out and consider all of the work we've done on the nested realities and nested truths, remember all the work we did on that? Let's zoom this in. Then we can draw a few conclusions, because this reveals truth, because we're looking at things within things, right? So if we look at this timeline, what you have is Jesus possibly outlining the middle section of world history with these 42 generations. And maybe he was pointing forward to another 2,000 years after he walked the earth. So what you have is this sandwich. You have 2,000 years here, 2,000 years in the middle, Well, what's the next logical segment of time? Another 2,000 years, which brings us to today. His outline is sandwiched in between two 2,000-year periods. Now, this isn't very confusing. This is just looking at biblical timelines and looking at some possible dates for his return. Now, we know in the last days will be like the days of Noah. And God gave Noah a rainbow. He gave him 42 degrees, which is the only viewing angle in which you could see a rainbow. So, where would the rainbow fall on the timeline? Now, this is amazing because it rained 40 days and nights. That's 20 and 20. So we have Noah's rainbow here in the 42 generations, the angle of viewing the rainbow. And we have the 20 and 20, which is 2,000 years here and possibly 2,000 years here. The raining of 20 days and nights. So it seems to be represented on the timeline. So the scripture that talks about the last days being like the days of Noah, I'm wondering if that was some kind of a clue. So in addition to describing the wickedness on earth and that being like the days of Noah, maybe there was also a clue about when Jesus would return. Now, this is where things get amazing because what I did is I took the rainbow colors and I overlaid them over the entire history from Adam of mankind. And it seems as though each color is represented in order and overlays the timeline. Now, this is up to interpretation, obviously, which is why you have to pray about things like this. But Adam, the name Adam, means red-orange, an ochre color. Those are the roots of Adam's Hebrew name. That's the first two colors in the rainbow, fitting right onto the timeline. Next, we have yellow. And yellow is represented in the Bible as purification, like fire, purifying by fire. Well, who was the pure bloodline? Who burned a sacrifice to even receive the rainbow? That was Noah. And Noah falls in the yellow portion, the purification, lining right up with the color. So Noah was like the yellow character. Now remember, Noah represented the first great filter of mankind. Mankind was narrowed all the way down to 8 people. Remember that person of interest episode where they were talking about collecting DNA using testing? And they were talking about the next great filter? Well, here we are talking about DNA and purity in Noah, the first filter. And now the enemy is trying to prepare for the next filter with DNA. But obviously the bloodlines are not pure. This is the enemy's serpent bloodline. So next in order is green in the rainbow. And look at this. This is after the flood when the earth regrew. Obviously it was all flooded out. Everything was dead. And then we had like a spring, and green obviously represents the green, the spring, rebirth. And you'll notice that also in this green period is where you see God's promise to Abraham falls right in this green section of the rainbow. What was God's promise to Abraham? That his seed would number in the sands of the sea and the stars of the heavens. And I think we can all agree that that promise that God made about Abraham's seed most closely lines up with green, or the abundant growth of God's seed. He didn't make that promise to any other peoples. So here's where we get the 14 and 14 and 14, the abundance of God's seed falling right in line with the rainbow in order. Next, we have blue, which obviously represents Jesus and baptism, falling right in line with the rainbow. Now, you've heard me compare Jesus to the color yellow. We've done this in other studies. And I'm thinking that had to do with comparing him to Noah. Because remember, Jesus is a filter, right? You're only saved through him. It's a narrow gate. Just like Noah represented a narrow gate of pure bloodline. Obviously, he was no Jesus, but you see the comparison. You see the metaphor, right? So this was another filter being saved through Jesus. And Noah and Jesus were alike in a lot of ways. Noah had a vessel with ribs submerged in water for 40 days and nights. Jesus was a vessel with ribs submerged through baptism, was in the wilderness for 40 days and nights. It was all about the water. But here's where things get more specific, because not only is Jesus the yellow, he's also the blue. The blue is baptism. Now, how can Jesus be the yellow and the blue? Well, purification by fire, baptism by water. First, you're baptized in water so that you can survive the purifying fire and be turned into the Spirit. Remember, Jesus said, in my kingdom, there will be no flesh. It's a spiritual kingdom. So when he returns and purifies by fire, it's like putting a wet blanket over someone and putting them into the fire. It's going to create steam, which represents the Spirit or the mist. Do you see how this works? So in fact, Jesus is both. He's the yellow, purifying fire, and the blue, baptism. And that leads us to the purple. And here's more evidence that this rainbow represents our human history, our timeline. Because what is the purple? Purple is red and blue mixed together. We've all done painting as children. And when you mix red and blue together, that becomes purple. And the book of Daniel says, in the last days, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but the two shall not cleave. He was talking about the blue bloods and the red bloods, the serpent bloodline and the men bloodline. And that's what, to me, seems as though we are in the purple. This is why you see the elite wearing purple all the time. This is what Prince was talking about, purple rain. That's what he was talking about. This earth age of this coming of the Son of Man. They believe in the purple. They want to mix the fallen ones with man so that you cannot be saved. They want as many people mixed. They want no flesh left so that God will have to make a tough, hard choice. But what he doesn't realize is if you believe in the Son of God, his only begotten Son, you will be saved. Now, I don't know any of this for sure. These are just theories. But this study that we've done has changed over the years and developed and seems to be inspired. I always pray to God that I not be misled or mislead his people. And he knows my heart. So, many of us believe, of course, we're living in the last days. And this could be some proof that we actually are from a biblical perspective. So, sorry for the hiccup in the first part of the show of not being able to find that verse. Hopefully you can just let people know when they watch this and they can fast forward through that part until we finally found it. And thanks again to the subscriber who knows their Bible a little bit better than I do, who, was able to point us in the right direction. Appreciate that. I have these things written on my heart, and sometimes I can't find them exactly in the Bible, but I know I've read it. And that's all that God cares about. We're not all supposed to be biblical scholars, finding every single verse, chapter, and verse off the top of our head. So, anyway, I don't believe anybody has done this rainbow comparison to the timeline of human history before. So this is probably a first. I hope that you guys share the show. Let's do a little Q&A if you guys have any questions, or maybe I left something out. You guys always find things that I leave out, so that's cool. Someone says banning people for what? Oh, I don't know what they said. Thanks everybody for showing up to the show. Now we've been under spiritual attack. We caught a strike. Then it got appealed within a couple hours on that person of interest episode. I told them in the, so that's where we were yesterday. Our live show was on the other channel because we didn't have the ability to go live. We had to go to the other channel. So, someone asked for the time. Yes, I'll print off a PDF of it, not a PDF, but a picture file for you guys, a PNG file. And I'll put that link in the pinned comments. You guys can all have that. I'll probably upload it to the Facebook group as well. But anyway, back to this strike we got yesterday. That was a very powerful show. And it was under attack because we showed the pre-programming. In their own person of interest episode, basically pointing forward to DNA collection under the guise of testing. And that was in the episode. And so all I did was show the episode. Well, we caught a strike. And then what happened? I appealed it and I showed YouTube that on their own server, they had the very same episode for sale. And if I was going to get a strike, they should get a strike. The person of interest should get a strike too, because that's all I did was review the episode. You see the power of looking at the enemy's deception and pointing it right back on. You're basically sticking a mirror in their face. What can they do? They can't do anything because it's their own words condemning them. And this is what Jesus said too. He would use his own words to condemn people. He would say, like with the Pharisees. Okay? So that's what happened. Luckily, we're back up and running on this channel. I'm trying to get reloaded, back up and running too. So I'm downloading everything off of there. Get that going so that we'll have 3 channels in case anything goes wrong with any of the channels. We will always be able to have a voice here. Now, people have asked, how is it you have a join button on your channel? And I'm sick and tired of channels trying to tear down other channels by saying just because you have a join button that there's something wrong with you. Everybody that comes to this channel knows beyond a shadow of a doubt we are here for the right reasons. We've been fighting this fight for 10 years on this platform. And we've lost channels. The only reason why we have a join button is because we've been able to skirt around the algorithms. I think also people would also agree that we do a very good job of skirting the algorithms. We do a very good job of changing the way we speak. That's why we have a join button. It's all about, to YouTube, it's about, are you fitting into the rules, right? And that's our tactic. The Bible tells us we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to have a tactic, a strategy. We're not supposed to just go, just walk into trouble. That's why we have it. Other channels aren't so careful. And that's fine. They speak their mind, but then know that you're going to become a target and you're going to get taken down. And that if you don't change the way you speak, then your voice will be gone. And then what good is your voice if you can't say anything? So that's why we have a join button. I stare down accusations to their face. So that's what's going on with that. Now, what else? Well, we got distracted a little bit with, some of these people upset about this whole thing with, I can't even say the word. See, this is what we're careful about this stuff. Magnet. And we gave people a chance to prove it and nothing came forward. I was going to wait 30 days, but it got really toxic with people making accusations and, so no, you're not going to come into our living room and start trying to tear everybody down and causing fights and all this. It's not going to happen. This is our living room. That's not censorship. If someone comes to your house, you invite them for dinner and they start insulting you and your children, what do? You show them the door. That's what we do here. The only time it makes a difference is if there's a platform that is supposed to be a fair publisher and they're pretending to be fair and they're not. They're silencing certain people and not others. Obviously, that would be a censorship issue. But excusing someone from your living room or your dinner table for being rude to you and your family and not wanting to have a constructive conversation, that would be not be considered censorship. Obviously, you wouldn't want someone accusing you of censoring them in your living room after they just told you you're a poor parent. So that's the difference. So hopefully that clarifies everything for people. And thanks to it looks like we got a couple people join the membership. So thanks for that. Appreciate that, you guys. I saw K Small, she's modding, and there was another person. Looks like Alex. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. So we'll just keep on keeping on, and I guess our strategy is working. We're able to get the word out. Now, just to show you how crazy YouTube is, I've got my other Reloaded channel, and if you guys go over there, you will see it's all spiritual content. All of the Bible, it's all the body code. There's like 600 videos over there. Well, after an entire year, YouTube decided to review the account and said that, oh, they can put ads on our videos, but we can't. And they basically said that that content was, what did they call it? Hateful. I was like, wow. Now, if any of you guys go over there, you'll see there's nothing hateful on there, but this is their new strategy. They want content creators to come on here and basically spend a lot of time doing all the hard work, but then you're not going to have time to do other things because you can't support yourself. That's what they want. They want us in their B system, not having time to look at these things and shove a mirror in their face. And that's exactly the way they want it. So now all of a sudden Christian content is not acceptable on YouTube. And that's never been the case before. This is brand new information. So we're just going to keep on keeping on, try to get around and skirt around their stuff, and continue to have a voice, continue to be able to encourage you guys and show you guys the truth. I love each and every one of you. I even love the haters. I pray for you that you get a better attitude about the way you're feeling, because that attitude is not going to get you very far in this life or get you any closer to Jesus. With that attitude of judgment and hate, all that's going to do is end you up in a very dark and bad place. We're here for the right reasons. We're trying to help people wake up. We're telling people about the dangers of the sticker. We're telling people about all the things that matter. And we're trying to bring people closer to Christ. I don't understand why some people have such a huge problem with that, but they do. I love you guys. Have a great day. Take care and be safe.